Hey, can you hear me? Hey,
Can you
can
hear
you
me
hear me?
now? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
There we go. Okay.
Good to see you. I guess no harm, no foul. We'll start a little late. I'm kind of new to all this myself, so I'm trying to get it all dialed in. But
Sure.
how you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Little chilly out there, huh?
It's insane. It's not just cold, it's dangerous
It,
outside. I'm telling you right
oh,
now.
unfortunately, my son had to go get a procedure on his tooth today, so my
Mm.
wife and him are out doing that. So I can just imagine how cold it is.
My wife and son are out too, and it's like, man, hope they don't have any car problems.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see. Um. Shit. Yeah, if anybody's watching, I appreciate you tuning in so far. Just give me a second. I'm trying to get it all dialed in. I'm fairly new to all this streaming stuff, so just give me a moment.
I'm being called by an AI assistant. It is getting crazy, this artificial intelligence stuff. I'm actually getting a phone call right now from a fake person.
That's wild. Let's see. How do I. Man, how do I go full screen? I swear, maybe I just need to do my own YouTube tutorial on how to do this stuff, because why isn't it going
Technology's
full?
great when it does what you want it to.
Yeah, sometimes. Well, maybe, you know what? Maybe I'll just, make this easy and let's see. Oops. Come on. Window capture. There we go. Alright, I guess I'll just do it like this until I can get it figured out next time or whenever, but this works for now. Alright, well, without further ado, thank you everybody for kind of tuning in. As everybody kind of knows who might uh, check out my channels, my name's Midwest Millennial. And today kind of started something new. For a long time on this page, we've talked about Illinois politics, and today we're going to start talking with the people that want to lead this state. So, without further ado, my first guest is Sheriff James Mendrick of DuPage County, who's running for governor of Illinois. Sheriff, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very good. I really, I kind of want to give you a pat on the back, a thank you for kind of reaching out to me on one of my posts on X to kind of learn more about your campaign and reach out to you. So thank you really, truly for you to, kind of give me the inspiration to do something like this. And, I kind of took it from, I met you back in, I think it was July of last year at the Illinois State Fair, or yeah, it was the State Fair, yeah. And you gave me this challenge coin, so I kind of figured, I had that comment, and I'm like, wow, this is one of those moments. So I kind of need to take advantage of it. So thank you.
That's awesome.
So for Illinoisans who might not really know you or may have heard a lot, a little bit about you or something like that, could you go maybe give a brief explanation of maybe who you are and where you are today? And yeah.
Sure. So, I am a religious person. I do believe that God puts you where you're meant to be. I never even intended to be police. still going to get that land. And that doesn't matter if they're just wide.
Yeah, some people don't really understand. There's a lot of, it's really hard. I don't really almost want to say, well, there is a lot of victims of it, but people don't understand. Like the Illinois is a very special place, and I feel like it's special because of there's so many like non-closed loopholes that government officials or anybody that even just has like some sort of power uses that to their leverage. And they use like any sort of excuse, like you said, like whether it comes to the eminent domain situation, I advise a lot of people to, go and listen to Zoe from Chicago Flips Red. She's a victim herself of that situation.
Right.
And, like just how those politicians just like blow that under the water like it's nothing. Like, you know, maybe for them that they have generational wealth, but some of us don't have stuff like that. Like it's those like grandma and grandpa or what my parents had that passed down to me, and it's very disastrous that the way that they use those leverages against them.
It's funny that you use the words generational wealth because that's another thing. So for like great soil, great crops. Big chunk of that on the
Yeah.
land. And then you have just never realized how large our state is. So we've been to now 83 of the counties. So we're getting close to all of them. But when we drive out, we're in awe. It's like, wow, the country is beautiful. You see all the land that we have, and then you see 2 miles of windmills and solar panels, and it's like, really, that's on farmland. And what I found out is when the farmers sign a contract, some of these are 20 to 30-year long contracts
Yeah.
that have these solar panels up.
Mm-hmm.
But what you don't realize is when you sign one of these contracts, now they have a vested interest, a legal interest in your property. So if you go to sell it, they get first crack at it because they have least interest on
Mm-hmm.
the land. So it's another way that they're taking, property away. Now, if you look at that, where you're consuming all of the land as government, and then they can lease government land, and then when the lease is over, they can release it to somebody else. When you look at that, and then you look at our population. So in 2018, we had a census that said we lost 800,000 residents.
Yeah.
So 800,000 people walked out of Illinois. But since then, we've gained 700,000 illegal immigrants. So take out 800,000 citizens, replace them with 700,000 illegal immigrants. Now, here's the difference between those populations. The people who left were nonconformists. They didn't like what was going on. They went to Tennessee or Alabama or wherever. They were upset with Illinois. They got out.
Right.
So now the 700,000 come in are completely dependent on government. Housing, food, you own them.
Mm-hmm.
Down the road, if you ever naturalize and have them vote, which everyone says is the ultimate goal, and it might be, I don't know. But for now, what you have to understand is that illegal immigrants are also counted in the census. So when you wash out 800,000 people, you bring in 700,000 illegal immigrants, you just maintain your head count for the most part, because that protects J.B. Pritzker's congressional seats, and that's what the census is really about. So if this continues, because I was wondering about 4 months ago, I saw JB on camera saying, if you don't like it, leave Illinois. And I'm like, wow, why would a governor be so okay with the citizens leaving? But I didn't realize it. The more people like us that leave, and then he says, hey, I'm calling in all these illegal immigrants, and they have to come through me, and they're my people. He considers the illegal, immigrants here be his people, his population. And I look at it very differently. I look at it as the citizens of Illinois are my people. And you have to understand whether you like the sanctuary state status or not, if you agree with it or not. I don't know how we can possibly continue to pay for a population right now that's 700,000, and soon will grow to 8, 9, a million people. There's, I think, 26 million illegal immigrants in our country, and we're residing 700,000 of them now at our cost. And how do you take a society and overlay it on your existing society and say, just compete? We're not going to give you more resources. And we're really seeing that dynamic change because, we're still 1.6 billion in the hole for just their health care. You have a very bad abuse of hospital ERs and ambulance runs. When we have what we call a Good Samaritan Act, it's very easy to be abused. I can call an ambulance and say my foot hurts. Doesn't matter if you're here illegally, if you have insurance or you don't, you're still going to get an ambulance run to the hospital. And then when you get into the hospital, they're gonna take care of you. Like I said, if it's foot surgery, you're going to go to orthopedics. If it's surgical, you're going to go to surgery. Cardiac, you're going to go to the cardio ward. And then what a hospital does is they take their daily, weekly, and monthly intake through ER, and they take those averages, and those are how many beds will be occupied. The beds that are not occupied is the ones you can make an appointment for. So if you're waiting 2 months to make an appointment, it's because probably 50 people who just bypassed everything and went straight to ER when it was a non-emergency. So that's the number. They say that 80% of the ER visits in Illinois right now are non-emergencies, actually Zoomable, treatable things that don't require an ER visit. So you take a hospital room, an ambulance, that run used to cost under $400. Now that's jacked up $1,400 because it gets abused so much. So that's just medical. Now let's look at education. We're going to pay $2 billion for college. I wish somebody would have paid for my college and my kids' college. $2 billion right there. And then think about the educational system. I'll be honest with you. Take Spanish. I can probably grasp 2 to 3 words every 4 words or so. So I can kind of maintain some semblance of understanding Spanish. And I think that if I was going to pick a language, that's the one that I would learn, because I think it would be the easiest that would translate from English. But when you get into like Chinese and Russian, those are very, very complex, different languages.
Oh, yeah.
That don't have any semblance to English. So now take an American teacher. Now they've got to try to, feather that out and get the person from Russia and China to be able to say hello and goodbye and, the basic concepts of English. And that takes all the teachers' time. So now your educational system is pivoting more towards helping, the few that come here instead of our kids. And you can see that in education. Even in my jail, half the people that come in can't read or write. And you're seeing that. And what bothers me is we do full rehabilitation in the jail. So 80% of the people who come into my jail are on heavy substance, heroin, fentanyl, alcohol, mixture thereof. Half of them are self-medicating for mental health issues. And we do full drug detox, recovery, medicated assisted treatment, Suboxone, methadone. Then I've got full one-on-one mental health treatment. And I mean, you couldn't get mental health treatment like what we have, even if you had good insurance in the private sector. One-on-one every day, mental health is very rare, but we do have that in our correctional facility. Then we have 200 counselors that teach, train, and educate 80 courses per week. And, I don't sit around waiting for a college kid from Purdue to create a study to tell me how to handle criminality. We actually pull and take data from all the people that come into our correctional facility. So we have a good 7-year block of data right now. And we found out the main reasons for the causation of crime, at least in where we live, it's just horrible. Most of them say that they were sodomized at 6 years old, that they were introduced to drugs like heroin and fentanyl at 10 and 11 years old, and then it'd be like, hey, shorty, go steal that car, you can't get in trouble, and that's been their lifestyle until they get busted and they're in my jail at 25 years old. So that's the causation of crime, at least here in Cook and DuPage. So we go through that whole process of counseling and we backwards engineer all that stuff. So the 80 courses we're teaching a week are anger management, criminal thinking, the things to deprogram some of that unfocused rage away from you and get you back on course. Then we offer gang tattoo removal. And once we started taking off the gang tats, that mutated and then ended up being for human trafficking branding. We take off cut marks, ejection ports, bullet holes, anything that is stigma we can take off your body. Then we do job training. We started with sanitation. We do welding, tiling, drywalling, indoor hydroponics, outdoor horticulture. We grow about 10,000 pounds of produce for our local food pantries. And it's good job training. It's actually, I let College of DuPage build an entire college within my jail. So we are a satellite of College of DuPage in my jail. So these are real certifications. And, that's the thing, the point I wanted to make about education. And again, I just going to say this did bring our recidivism rates, our repeat offenders down from 75 to 15%. All our opioid numbers went from 90 to 20%, bringing you through this, what we call a continuum of care. But it bothers me, getting back to school, that I can take an inmate who is completely illiterate, but we do GEDs too. So we're constantly getting people their high school equivalency. So I can take somebody who's illiterate and I can get them their GED, high school equivalency, college, job training, the small engine repair, and then they'll be orating a written report on a college course. I can do all this in 2 years. So if I can bring you through high school to college to job training in a 2-year period of time, what is our school system doing for 12 years? How am I getting these people? And in 12 years in school, they haven't learned to read or write. It puzzles me, what's going on in our education system right now.
Yeah, it is very disturbing. And, unfortunately, a topic that kind of ties two together, with the education system like that. And it's tough. I get it, from a parent standpoint. I'm a parent. I have 3 children of my own that go to public schools. The last thing anybody wants to do is talk about cut funding for education. Like, right. Nobody wants to take any money from education. If anything, like, we want to put more money to it. But I feel like the problem that we have here in Illinois is, we have obviously a lot of funding into the education, but we have no, real outcomes. And, that's disturbing, You keep throwing money at something and nothing's working. It's like you're just like beating a dead horse.
Yeah, I think what they have to do is start to create for lack of a better way to say it, a grading metric where they're being scored for their success. So at least if you ever are going to consolidate, consolidate from the poorest performers. I think if you introduce school choice and make them compete like college, where hey, if somebody wants to pay money and drive further to take their kid to what they consider a better school,
Right.
be able to, and I think that would create a competitiveness to it. But then I think there should be an annual scorecard on performance, and it should be how many people passed your curriculum, how many scored high, how many scored low, because then if there ever is consolidation that occurs, you're going to cut from the bottom 10% that is not performing anyway. So, it's easier to say I'm going to consolidate you if you're not performing your function.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why I bring up, cutting and, the funding of education is a lot of our property tax money is tied to our schools. And, that is probably, I believe that's really, the biggest issue here in this state, that a lot of people are, it blew up in the news here recently, especially in Chicago and a lot of those South Side Chicago suburbs with their property taxes exploding like over 100%. Like, that's wild. And, that's something that a lot of people, a lot of Illinoisans are struggling with, is like high property taxes. And, to cut a lot of those, a lot of that money is tied to school funding. So my question to you is, addressing the property tax issue, how do you think something like that your administration could address, but, address in a manner to where it would give like the securities to schools to where their funding wouldn't be cut, or maybe even give, more of a reassurance to Illinoisans that like, a lot of people, for instance, they hear cut and they just think of bad, but I look at it like this. JB Pritzker has ran up our budget about over $10 billion since he's taken office. Are we really going to get that money back? Probably not. Nope. What I would say, though, is I would like to, with all the money that we put into the state of Illinois, I think we should be directing it in the more appropriate manners to where we can get the appropriate outcomes. And so, yeah, like I was saying, is my question to you is, what do you think that maybe your administration could do to tackle the high property taxes? But also, with people knowing, property taxes fund a lot of our school districts, how could we tackle that in a manner to where it wouldn't really affect our schools, but it would give the outcomes and the relief to Illinoisans that they severely need in a time like right now?
The saddest part of the answer to your question is that it's all pretty easy to resolve. They over complexify everything so you don't understand what's going on. You know what? Let's again, being an investigator, being somebody who's always looked at finances as something to rip apart and investigate to find wrongdoing. I look at things quite differently. And if we just stop our abuses, I would have money to lower your property taxes by 20%. Here's three things financially that could dump your property taxes by, like I said, 20%. First, you have things called NGOs, non-governmental organizations, right? This is where we funnel billions of dollars out to special interest groups. Do you remember when Kamala Harris was running and they were finding out that they were just dumping money, Iraq, Sesame Street?
Yeah.
Condoms for, Uganda, all this crazy stuff. It was like they were trying to shovel money out because they were getting into that $1 trillion.
It's like they were.
Right. So it almost seemed like they were trying to break the bank because then it creates socialism. Then it's complete government dependency, the economy breaks. And that's kind of what's going on in Illinois. So NGOs, let's get back to that, non-governmental organizations. The big gripe with those is they're not FOIable, they're not auditable because it's billions of dollars. You could take, they have $2 million for guitars over guns. So to discuss playing guitar instead of having a gun, that's $2 million of our tax money. For a township highway commissioner, he got $600,000 for his Little League team. And I don't know what you could possibly spend $600,000 on. Don't know. Then I saw $500,000 on an NGO for Lincoln College, which is great. I got my 2-year degree from Lincoln College, but they've been closed since 2022. And I did a site visit just a couple weeks ago. They're still closed, but didn't stop them getting $500,000. So you see all these abuses, and you have to understand. I come from, government work where we have contracts, we have money that comes in and out, and for there to be NGOs that have not foyable, not auditable, that is because they want it that way. Because in the real world and real government, there's performance metrics, and I would not give you money. Say the sheriff's office was going to subcontract somebody for a service. I'm going to give you 25% of the money now, and they're going to be performance metrics. After you give me the metrics the first 3 months, then you'll get the next 25%. Then at 6 months, you get the next 25%. And you have to perform to the performance metrics to show you're spending the money what you should be. And you put in one sentence in a contract saying you will have to respond to audits. And that's all you have to put in one line saying that. They're asking you for money, right? You're giving these NGOs money. So you can write in any metrics you want in the contract. And the fact that they have no ability to audit or FOIA means they wrote it that way on purpose. That way they can funnel the money out to special interests, just like Kamala was with all this money going overseas. They're doing the same thing. So you can solve $1 billion, multi-billion-dollar bleed just by putting performance metrics and the ability to audit these NGOs, because then they'll dry up. Once they're exposed in the sunlight, their guitars over guns isn't going to get $2 million of it. Because what metric are they going to have? I talked to a bunch of kids about guns. They'll give me the other, $1 million. It doesn't work like that. So you stop the bleed there. That is just wasteful spending. Then you look at Medicaid, right? So I know somebody who just did a FOIA on Department of Family Services. And the question on the FOIA was, how many people are you giving Medicaid to that have not earned the Social Security now? Now, if you got Medicaid and you didn't give a social, that means you're here illegally and you're getting benefits that are supposed to go to a citizen.
Right.
That's why it came back at 22,000 people getting about $11,000 a year in Medicaid benefits. That's $242 million. That was on the first FOIA. Now they're FOIA DCFS, Children's Center, all these other entities. I think this is going to end up being like a Minnesota thing, where you're going to find out that Medicaid abuse is just rampant. And you're going to have billions of dollars in fraud with Medicaid. That's coming down. Now, those two things are big billion-dollar things that can save a lot of money, but it's not the biggest. The biggest is the big lie. It's the sanctuary state, where they say that the sanctuary state is helping somebody, helping immigrants. It's not. For one thing, more than half of them are getting human trafficked on the way over here. And the other half have a family member held back where they came from because you're distributing drugs for the cartels, because it's really hard to get out of your country without cartel help, right? They're the ones who you pay, they make some deal with you, and then they traffic you, through the border. That happened for 4 years in Joe Biden's open borders. But so when I told you about the 700,000 people here, when you think about it, we have their $1.6 billion for their healthcare. We're still on the hook for $740 million they spent this year. I can't remember. I think it was $45 million for a new welcoming center next year. The $2 billion for their college. We lost $2 billion because we're violating federal law. So we lost all those federal grants because whether they like it or not, when a state law and a federal law conflict, the federal law prevails. So we're actually violating federal law to be doing this. So now we're taking billions of dollars. We're probably going to spend internally about $6 to $7 billion a year. And that's a problem that exponentially grows because we're still bringing people in. As long as we maintain the sanctuary state, it grows. But Pritzker needs the sanctuary state. He needs it really bad because that's his pulpit to fight with Donald Trump. Now, here's the big lie. I have the second biggest jail in the state. And here's what happens when you don't have a sanctuary state. Like if we went to the day before it started, the way it works is for non-sanctuary state is if you're here illegally and then you commit a crime, because we've never had people in our jail just for immigration issues. So if you're here and then, say you beat somebody up, we'll use a battery. And if you commit a battery and then you go to jail, we put you on a fingerprint system and it says detained. So we would call ICE. ICE and the consulate would talk to the inmate and determine what the status is. If they need, they'll pull in a magistrate, which is a fancy word for immigration judge. And then they run a process to determine if you were running from a crime that was significant that they would deport you for, or if the new crime that you just committed was big enough to be deported. They didn't always deport for, the little stuff. They always say, do your process and let them go. So after that, if they say deport, then we turn them over to ICE, and there's no raids. And here's the big lie that the media does, and this is a J.B. Pritzker thing. The raids are completely Pritzker driven. They're Brandon Johnson. The guys who hate the cops so much, it's their fault, because if there was access by ICE to our correctional facilities, here's how it works. And again, this is where my expertise weighs in, because I know how ICE works, how their head count works. They're a government law enforcement institution just like us. They are proactively trying to get the illegal aliens that they're targeting, and they have to take 20, 30 men teams into a city that is basically doxing them, attacking them. We have a lot of issues that you saw in Minnesota where their windows are being broken, people are trying to run them over, obstruct them, all that. So you take that model of trying to do proactive raids, and you might be able to get 15 people out of the city a week doing that. I mean, it's arduous, hard work. But if you wanted to deal with this just in criminality and not have to ever see another raid again, just get rid of the sanctuary state. Because then we give ICE access to the jail. So we have 92 correctional facilities in Illinois. And like I said, you could drive 7 hours in Illinois and still be in Illinois. It's a huge state. So you have a 7-hour-long state with 92 correctional facilities. When we call ICE, it's called an ICE hold. If they take more than 3 days picking up their ICE prisoners, then they have to fully reimburse us for everything that they cost for their stay in our correctional facility. So that means they have to do weekly pickups. So if there was no sanctuary state, think about it now. We have 700,000 people illegally in our country. And if 92 jails were calling every day to say, we have a detainer, we have a detainer, we have a detainer, they would have to kill all their proactive work. They would have to add 20% onto their manpower. Now they would be a full-time transport unit going from 92 jails, one to the other to do pickups, and then they would siphon out hundreds of the illegal immigrants that are here breaking laws, and it would only be the people breaking the laws. See, that's the big lie that the media tries to portray this as something pro-immigrant. The sanctuary state is the cause for the raids. If we had a sanctuary state, this is only dealt with in a correctional facility. Mm-hmm. But they took the correctional facility access away. And for us, it's a really foreign ideal to say, don't work with your federal components. Yeah, local law enforcement, you can't talk to your own units of government. And it's what really causes, they use the word sanctuary and safety and sanctuary. And then until they get to assault rifles, then it's assault rifles, but this is media branding, right?
For sure.
They want you to think the way they want you to think, because again, they don't want this problem solved. J.B. Pritzker needs this as a platform to fight with Donald Trump, because then he can say, Donald Trump's coming in here and coming after my people. You have to go through me, and all this, theatrics that he does. And it's a real shame, because he's victimizing human beings. And J.B. Pritzker is not pro-immigrant. He's pro-control. These are people who are dependent that he can control. That's all he wants. The more that he can wash out of us and replace with illegal immigrants, and then protect them with the sanctuary state. And then on the opposite side, it creates the raids that he needs to fuel a campaign for president.
Yeah, that's the thing that a lot of people seem to have that disconnect with, that, if it wasn't for the sanctuary status, then, the federal government or whoever's, looking for their criminal that's stuck out in Illinois, that's wanted by the government and has to go and, broke the law. We are a country of laws, but, when there's that restriction there, a lot of people aren't understanding that it could have been just so simple for them to just show up to the jail, take the person, and be on their way. But now they got to go out into Downers Grove and hunt this person down like it's a full-fledged investigation when it don't even need to be. And I also believe too, real quick, I also believe that with in doing that, you're now wasting more resources than we actually need to be using. So it's like it's just negatives hitting with negatives, and there's nothing positive coming out of it. But like you said, it's free clout for JB Pritzker to use against President Trump, for him to prop himself up for his next position to be president. And for people to not see something like that too, it's never about representing the people of Illinois to him. It's about politics. It's about his next job. It's about his next gig. And like you said, he's victimizing a lot of people. And then not even just that, you have a lot of individuals like Joe Abraham, his daughter, who was killed by an illegal alien here in Illinois. I hate to say it, but you're really spitting in those people's faces. Those are loved ones. Those are family members, and it could have been just something so simple when that person committed the crime, and they should have been deported. They should have been deported, not put back out on the streets to, here we are committing another crime. And now, somebody's life was, attached to that.
Well, with the Joe Abraham thing, what you have to realize too is that's a whole nother can of worms. One of the biggest spiking issues we have right now is no valid drivers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have all these people, 700,000. And let me put it this way. So here in DuPage County, during the summer, I saw a car. It was all beat up, a lot of damage, no markings on it, pulling into my driveway. And then a guy got out. He looked like, if I could guess, probably Venezuelan. He didn't have a shirt on. He just had shorts on. And he starts running up to my house. And then he dropped an Amazon package on my front doorstep. So I was like, okay, so they're using, illegal immigrants to deliver Amazon. But they're not valid drivers. And that is spiking in such a category. And at best, you'll be paying for the accident because they don't have insurance. At worst, it's going to be a Joe Abraham thing and somebody could get hurt or killed. And when we see a category like no valid driving go up 300%, and then if you were to say to me, hey, how many of those no valid drivers were illegal aliens? You know what I'd say? I don't know. The sanctuary state says I can't ask that question. Hey, Sheriff, how many illegal immigrants have you had in your jail? I don't know. We're not allowed to ask it in the jail either. In fact, I've got to offer them a consulate. So since I can't ask them, I've put a poster up on intake saying, if you want a consulate, ask for one, because I can't even ask you what country you're from. Now, again, they don't allow us to tally and trap that data, right? Mm-hmm. Illegal to trap data of how many people are illegally driving. Illegal to create data on how many are coming into a jail. You're not allowed to ask for an ID on voting. You're not allowed to audit or FOIA NGOs. You see a pattern here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
These are things they don't want fixed.
Mm-hmm.
They're systemically what they're using to take all our money, really, because, again, I'm going to go back to the sanctuary state. That is your most expensive thing to pay for human beings. Like I told you, I supervise over 800 people. My biggest expense is headcount. The reason I can save for every $1 I spend in rehabilitation, it saves me $19 in incarceration costs. That's because housing is so expensive. But now you're giving people hotel rooms and link cards and paying for their education. There is no more expensive way to deal with people than that, especially to the tune of 700,000. So a very large portion, the reason you're seeing taxes and all this stuff go up so much is they're paying for another unfunded mandate. Like I said, he added in almost $4 billion after the budget was approved. Well, the sanctuary state is increasing the budget every day because as they roll in, that's more people you're paying for. So it's an exponential cost that never stops growing. And it'll continue to grow into the millions, and then it'll take more and more of our economy. That's why I'm saying if we eliminated the sanctuary state, not only would it be able to handle criminality within a jail instead of the raids, but it would also save us billions upon billions of dollars and actually allow us to lower property taxes. And I want to say one thing too with the raids. You have to understand. So I'm a cop.
Yeah.
If I pull you over for DUI and I give you a break and let you go and you crash into somebody and kill them, I'm doomed. If I go to a domestic battery and the door opens up and one's the husband or wife is bleeding and the other one's guilty of it, and I say, well, just get along, and I leave, and then one kills the other one, I'm doomed. So now you have to look at your immigration enforcers, right? They swear to enforce immigration laws. So if you don't give them access to a jail and they don't go to the 92 jails and just do transport, they have to try to achieve their targets in a residence, work, out in the public. So if they come across their target, they got the guy wanted for rape or murder, and you're with 3 other people who haven't not committed a crime, but they are here illegally, it's just like the DUI and the domestic. If they don't take them into custody, then say one of them hurts a 12-year-old girl. Now they're going to say, ICE agents, you didn't do your job. You had this person in custody. They were here illegally. You let them go, and now they hurt somebody. So that's causing what they call the collateral damage, is making them go out and do the raids. And again, that's J.B. Pritzker's fault. The collateral damage is all J.B. Pritzker's fault. He's the one that will not give access to correctional facilities to keep this just being handled on a criminal level.
Yeah, and it's something, to me, it's like something so simple, I believe, there's a lot of like a misconception too. Like, some people think that the Republican Party is like anti-immigrant. Like,
right.
We are not anti-immigrant. We are pro-legal immigration. Right. As national security, we have a right to know who's coming in here and why you're coming in here and possibly where you came from and what you even did. We need to know these things for national security reasons. The world is not, it's not the nicest place everywhere in the world. And some people...
Well, I have to admit, so, and here's part of it. I do all that rehabilitation stuff, and we're actually one of the national leaders. I teach a class on rehabilitation in the jail at the National Sheriff's Association. So when I go there and teach my class, there's other sheriffs teaching their classes too. So I sat in on some of the Texas and California sheriff's classes when Joe Biden first opened up the borders. And see, the sanctuary state, when it was incepted, it was more like a political stunt. It didn't really matter.
Right.
We didn't have open borders. When Biden said, hey, wide open borders for 4 years, that's when everyone started getting bussed out here just in droves. Then it became such a major issue because, if you look at the Trump administration right before Biden's administration, there were years where there were only 3 illegally crossing an entire year. So once Biden opened up the open borders, I saw it myself with my own eyes, videotapes of classes being taught by sheriffs that were on the border, where Border Patrol were miles away processing people, and there were big holes in the fence. And I personally watched videos of 200 people in orange jumpsuits come out in through holes in the fence into our country. So they definitely dumped their jails and their mental health institutions when this all started. Mm-hmm. So those people have been in our country for 4.5 years now. I watched tactical teams in combat gear and guns walk through holes in a fence, open borders. So we got their cartel element. They dumped their jails. They dumped their mental health institutions. So in the very first year of Biden's open border, we got and who wouldn't? If we're dumb enough to make holes in our border and have people playing with an app to register people on their phones, and at the same time they're dumping their entire jails. We deserve it for being so stupid. We're the only country that was dumb enough to do that. But you have to understand that is now what we're mitigating now. We are seeing huge spikes in crime. They keep trying to say crime is going down, and they've been cute about that. They changed all the reporting systems. Mm-hmm. We used to do Illinois Uniform Reporting Codes, and they changed it to a system called NIBRIS that looks at the codes for crime differently, and it's reported differently, so they can say it came down. Just like they say murder is down, drug overdoses are down.
Since the 60s.
So I hate to say it, shootings are up, attempted overdoses are up, but yes, the death of murder and overdoses is down 100% because medical technology has gone up so much. Mm-hmm. Now we can Narcan you and bring you back to life. They have the silver nitrate and all this stuff. I can't believe how many times you can get shot and they can now save you in the hospital.
Right.
So while, sure, accomplished murder in overdoses might be down, it's only because of technology. The actual actions of overdoses and shootings have all gone up, but liars use numbers.
Right. And talking about crime, a lot of people too, they don't I advise them to even go and look at the statistics too. They gloss over the fact of that crime went up at the height of at the COVID era, and crime still isn't even back down to like that specific spot. So, like, how could they really generally say that crime is down since, or it's where it's at from the 60s? If you ask me, crime is still up high. And a lot of people, too, they don't look at the fact of that Chicago is still the shooting capital of the world.
13 years in a row.
Yeah. So as much as the murder rate goes down and you have less shootings, you're still in the number one spot. They make anything look good, like we've, just talked about, they use soft words to make anything sound great. Safety Acts, Sanctuary City,
Now think of the Safety Act too. So the Safety Act, we are the leaders in rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
But now, do you know that if I got busted dealing a brick of fentanyl, I'll get out the same day. You're not considered a threat to society. The threshold for detainment now is a threat to society or a threat to a specifically named person. So if I get busted dealing a brick of fentanyl, I'm going to get out that same day because I'm not considered a threat to society. Now, hey, here's street reality. If I get popped with a brick of dope and I get out, I now owe my dealer, and I'm going to get killed unless I can produce the profit to make up for that brick of dope. So now I got to sell 3 of them to satisfy him. And as I'm overdosing all these people, how is that not being a threat to society? And you got to understand, I go back to that other number I gave you, that 80% of the people who come in are high on substance.
Mm-hmm.
So now instead of doing detoxification, drug treatment, psychological work, counseling, job training, now we let them go that same day because the bond court just says they have to let them go. But we're letting them go while they're tweaking, jonesing, or detoxing. So typically people don't make very good decisions while they're jonesing on heroin or fentanyl. So that's creating multiple crimes committed prior to them being sentenced. And then what ends up happening is the Safety Act promulgates long-term incarceration. Because when we're letting people go, they think it's just a ticket. Well, yeah, technically it's a ticket, but there's a court date and it has all the same responsibilities of an arrest. So when you get that ticket and then get arrested again and again, and now you see a judge for the first time after you have 3 or 4 of them, now you're a career criminal, repeat offender, you're going to be 20 years in IDOC. So again, the Safety Act promulgates long-term incarceration and completely disrupts any type of rehabilitation.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that'll say it needs a lot of rework, and then there's a lot of people that'll say it needs to go, and it's a real tough subject, and it's going to be very interesting. I definitely think this upcoming year with the possible change of governor and possible change of who knows, maybe we adapt and get more House and senators. That'd be nice, but. Yeah, in my personal opinion, I would really like to see something like this go. I think that this is really crushing our state, and it's encouraging bad behavior. Let's just face it. Yeah, it's not good. You kind of talked about budgeting a little bit, and I've listened to kind of some of your town halls and stuff like that. You talked about how you budget your police department. You don't go above your budget. You've been in your budget the whole time. What do you think, with the ongoing spotlight with Minnesota and their fraud and all that? Illinois has been getting a little bit of fraud spotlight itself, and J.B. Pritzker's kind of deflected against some of that. There's been some other people that have brought up, the fraud issues and talks like that, who are also running as well. Personally, I've actually went and looked, and I think it was like about 2023 to about this current year now. The child care payments are up about 33% or 36% or something like that, is what I looked or calculated in all. So, a lot of people have been, personally, even myself, have been saying, it wouldn't hurt, to just have an audit, just look at our money, give us the satisfaction that our money is being spent correctly. What's wrong with that? If you were elected governor, would, obviously, we're in Democrat Illinois. We got a lot of that issue to deal with, and you'd be the one guy only Republican. You'd be battling a whole Democrat legislature. Would you call on the federal government or welcome the federal government to possibly audit our whole state?
Yeah. So again, the difference between me and everybody else is I'm able to forensically audit a budget myself, and you got to understand. When I'm done with this term, and if I started a term as governor, I would still be a certified police officer for 2 years. Everyone's going to jail who's stealing. I'm telling you that right now. Because then guess what? Then they give me the shiny button. I'm in charge of the state police, right? Now I own an army of police as a certified police officer who is also a governor. I would be calling the federal government, Donald Trump, the first day, asking for access with ICE to our jails, because sanctuary state I would get rid of on the day one. But then, yes, when I say an audit, you have to understand, again, I'm going to go cop on you here, because I think this is what they need in the city. We start with job code for positions. During the DEI time, people were getting a lot of jobs that they weren't qualified for. In the way government, like I said, business and government are run differently. In government, they create job codes, right? So they'll say to be like for us, say you want to be a patrolman, there are going to be certain skills, knowledge, abilities, and certifications and training that are requisite for you to have to get this pay rate, right? And now if you're a sergeant, there's different skills, knowledge, and abilities and training for that next hike in pay rate. Now, if you're a lieutenant, then there's a different skills, knowledge, abilities, training, certifications required for that pay code. And that's how government pay codes work. We need to run a report on every single government pay code, and we will find billions in buddy jobs. There are aldermen in Chicago that make $150,000, but the assistant alderman, their employee, makes $250,000. So when you see this type of abuse, now I know that again, people are always the most expensive thing. We need to do a full forensic audit first of every job code and make sure it's commensurate to the pay rates that they're supposed to get for the requisite training required for that position. Right there is the beginning. Then we need to look at all the bidding, all the contracts, anything that's saying the sole source. I mean, we have a county clerk right now in DuPage refusing to do any kind of bidding, and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawsuits fighting with our county and the state's attorney. She doesn't even come to work, basically, and instead she's incurred all this lawsuit money because she refused to do a bidding process. And she's saying that she's right, and that's what she's suing back for. So you got to understand, these people actually think they're right while they break the law. I've never seen anything like it. Chicago's like 1920s Al Capone era right now. So let's take a thing that can drive businesses in and out. It's your infrastructure, right? So have you noticed how roads are?
Right.
And I'll tell you, the roads, bridges, infrastructure, they're kind of crappy out here. They're really bad in Chicago. Everywhere else we go to down south and west there, it's just terrible.
Yeah, they're not perfect.
So here's why. So if I say I'm a mayor village manager and I want to fix my roads, okay, I have a fund for that. And that's called a local government distributed fund, right? So that's basically the town's chunk of income tax. When they made income tax, when they invented it, they said the promise is that 10% of global income tax will go to the municipalities, and that money is for road repair, infrastructure, and public safety. So that 10% has been driven down by the state to 6%, and now Pritzker's saying he's going to freeze it at 6%, and that will never be returned. So they've taken 40% of a local mayor village manager's ability to do any infrastructure repairs just by absorbing 40% of our income tax money locally. So, okay, so I can't do it locally now. So I need my roads fixed, a bridge fixed. Okay, I'm going to ask the state. Now, the state would do it through the motor vehicle fuel tax. And that had a 2016 amendment that said this money is solely for road repair infrastructure. And then they put another addendum in there saying that we put this language in here so money cannot be diverted from this fund.
Correct.
Well, 4 months ago, J.B. Pritzker swept $308 million out of that very fund. So when questioned, they're like, oh, well, this is not illegal. This was interest. We swept the interest from the account. And technically, while maybe that is legal because it's not the capital, it's the interest, you can sweep that. But to sweep $308 million from the account means that you never spent the capital. You're sitting that money there to generate the interest so you can sweep it, which means now locally, no local distributive fund, no motor vehicle tax money. So you've taken the local and the state solvability factor for your potholes, your road repair, your bridge repair, and you've stymied both accounts. And that's why we're seeing our state atrophy. And you know how many jobs that would generate? Just like, there's 500 years of coal in Illinois, in almost every county, that we could be energy independent. And right now, we regulate ourselves not to use most of our coal mines. That's what I'm told by all the farmers, that there's 500 years plus of unused coal right under our feet. If we were to use our own coal, mine it, and export, our energy costs would be half of what they are now. And it's a regulation. Now, mind you, they regulate that we can't mine it, but since I think turbine is only 3.5% of the megawatts and electric is only hit like 6.5%, we're still dependent on gas and coal no matter what you do. So we're importing it from other places and paying, and then your energy bill will go up because we're not allowed to use the resource that we have here right under our own feet. So there's so many ways that we can improve our economy, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You use your road fund money the way you're supposed to. And again, the reason they're sweeping the money out and why they're taking in income tax, this is all to pay for a new population, right? They're doing all this crazy stuff because they have to pay for an exponentially growing problem that they're causing with the sanctuary state. This problem will get worse every single day because we're going to pay for more people every single day. And taking care of a person and paying for all of their stuff is the most expensive thing you could possibly have to pay for.
Yeah, it's a sad reality, and yeah. So talking about job growth, what would be your plan to make Illinois a little bit more competitive for business and job creation?
I think we have to learn a word called parity. So when I want to do things in the sheriff's office and I want to improve something, I always look at the collar counties, the people around, and do comparables. So our workers' compensation rates are 3 times higher than every state around us. We need to create parity with that. We need to look at all the regulation that's put on our businesses. And I mean, come on, really? Do we have to tell the feds, no, we're not going to let them have tax-free tips? I mean, these are soul crushers, right? That's a really big deal to a lot of people. We need to stimulate our economy, create jobs, support instead of regulate. And that's really what we're doing. We're just over-regulating everybody. What we need to do is break out that road repair money. Just in coal and road repair, do you know how many construction jobs, how many union jobs those 2 venues would create if we're creating our own energy through coal? If we're using our distributive fund, our motor vehicle tax fund the way we're supposed to, that's all construction jobs, pavement jobs, all kinds of stimulation. That beautifies your environment again. That attracts business back because now it's an attractive looking state instead of dilapidated. Because I'll tell you, when you go drive into a town in Illinois, I would say 80% of the towns that I've driven through, it's like, wow, decay. That's the first thing you think of is, man, these towns are decaying. And if I'm a business owner, am I going to drive into a town that looks like it's decaying and say, I want to put a business right there in the middle of that? No, you have to start worrying about your infrastructure, what we're paying money. And right now, see, we can't pay for things when we're paying for people. People are too much more than things. So we have to stop the bleed with the sanctuary state and take all that money and then start using our funds for what they're supposed to be used for again. And that will create jobs, that will make everything look better, that'll attract business. And I hate to say it, with the sanctuary state, it needs to be categorical holding for detainment, like felonies and multiple repeat offender misdemeanors, because when they're getting hit on the backside of retail theft, so let's take Oak Brook Mall. It would not be unusual for like a group of Venezuelans to hit the mall, take $10,000 in retail theft, get arrested. Then they're going to tell us, you're going to have to let us go in 2 hours, and they're right. And then they're out 2 hours, and then they go back to the same mall and take another 10,000, and that can happen 3 times in a day. So that is a soul crusher for business. So you're already being regulated, you're being taxed, your worker compensation rates are 3 times everybody else's. There's contingency litigation in Illinois where you don't even have to put up money to get a lawyer to sue for, eating a bad cheeseburger or getting a pinched finger. It doesn't matter which. So you have all that litigation, and you're expecting your community to thrive and all that. And it's just not possible. We have to change so many behaviors, and we have to start thinking about our infrastructure and job creation. And again, I think that the coal industry would be a really big one. And here's another thing. If you want to stimulate agriculture jobs, quit putting solar panels and turbines on cropland. You know what they could do? They could take soybeans. We should do more soybeans and more corn. Those 2 elements together. Now you put those together, and that is called biofuel, right? Mm-hmm. That's the fuel that they use in jets. That is worth that's liquid gold, and we could export that because we have the richest soil for corn and soybeans. So why not, instead of solar panels? Because what they don't realize with these solar panels too, when you say I'm going to make a 20 or 30-year lease with you for solar panels on agriculture, that lease has to be on for that temporality, right? So if I sell my farm during that contract, the provider for those solar panels gets first crack at the agricultural land because they have a vested interest and they have a lease already to have that property, furnish their solar panels or their turbines. Mm-hmm. So we need to also manage our agriculture. We have, again, get out of the city, and when you start going south and west, it's all agriculture. We are an agriculture state. So we have to start looking at the biofuel, at coal, at not doing government subsidies. And here's another thing. All our hog farms, all our pork is controlled by China. And that's foreign-owned American land. And they own most of our pork production. And I'll tell you what, one thing I would also do, and this is not my idea, I'm stealing it from the Arkansas governor, Sarah Huckabee. A couple of years ago, she had that same problem where the Chinese were buying all the seed factories, right?
Yeah.
And what she did in eminent domain and said that anybody who's considered a combatant of America cannot hold property rights in Arkansas. And I would say we do the same thing in Illinois. And then we eminent domain the Chinese own pork farms, and because first they go for your food source. They already control all the pharmaceuticals. Then they start moving into strategic places that are closer to military bases and stuff like that. That needs to be frozen now. We need to do what Arkansas did and take away control from foreign entities, our land and our assets.
Yeah. Like you said, it's our land and our assets, and our people should come first, not no foreign adversary. It's it's crazy that you even bring that up, because just here recently the news covered that the mayor of Chicago is possibly thinking about buying back the meters from Wall Street and foreign sovereign wealth Abu Dhabi, and it's like, you're telling me we couldn't have found anybody in any city in the United States that could have been an investor?
Look,
really?
They just did that. That's car batteries, right? And that's a Chinese-based company they gave all the car battery production to. Mm-hmm. They passed like 18 American companies to work with Goshen.
Unreal. It's just like I said, you can't find anybody American. Come on,
right?
I could name an electric car manufacturer, but they won't really like that one. But
yeah, right.
Yeah. So we've been going here for a little bit over an hour. kind of to wrap it up a little bit, kind of my last question for you I'd really like to ask is, a lot of Illinoisans obviously feel disillusioned with maybe state politics. What would you say to voters who are not really feeling or really even seeing any changes? And what would be maybe your message to those voters who maybe might be on the fence in these primaries or even as we get closer to the general election?
Well, I think that we're in a state now where Illinois needs an emergency manager. I don't think we need another politician. It's kind of like the gun thing, 13 years in a row. That's a definition of insanity, thinking that if you keep doing the same thing, that you're going to get a different result. I think that it's time that we have somebody who's been working in government, that knows how, because you know what? I would be out there mitigating emergencies in real time. I'm not the kind of guy who is going to come to a tornado scene a week later to say, wow, look how everything's destroyed. I'd be right in the middle of it, helping my emergency managers get the logs out of the road and the chipper shredders and the electric restored, and guarding for any kind of looting and all that kind of stuff. I believe that I hold government experience where none of my opponents do. I mean, I don't think that they understand crime, and right now I think crime is a really big thing. I think that we need to reel in what the Sanctuary State and the Safety Act combined have done. I think that we also need somebody who can actually investigate financial crimes, not just say the word Doge. Anybody can say Doge. What is Doge? Doge is a word. How about forensically audit all of the headcount, the contracts, and the budget books? And you start in A and end in Z, and you go through absolutely everything, and the amount of misspending that we'll find. Just when you look at how the road taxes are being used, how NGOs are being used, how Medicaid is being abused, how the Sanctuary State is sucking in all our money, how the Safety Act is creating so much crime, and you have no idea how much your law enforcement is being costed there. So these are all things, when you look at them combined, are billions and billions of dollars, enough money to drop your energy bills, your property taxes. It's all right there. And just the 6 things that I named there, that's probably about $15 billion a year. I mean, it's sad that it's that easy to see the waste, that it is so easily fixable, but I don't believe it'll ever be fixed by another politician. I think we need somebody who can mitigate emergencies in real time in that office.
Well, best of luck to you, Sheriff Mendrick. I really do hope, people, really get out and, this is a time for Illinois. We could really turn this thing around, but it's going to take all of us to get out there. And, just like me doing this, little live interview with you, it's, people need to learn that, Illinois is a very special place. The Democrats have ran Illinois for a very long time, so there's nobody else to blame. It's
right.
It's time that we start to give Republicans a chance, and yeah, yeah. Well, Mr. Mendrick, Sheriff Mendrick, I appreciate you, again, reaching out to me and coming on here and doing this and giving me the opportunity to do this with you. So I hope to see you around, and we'll stay in contact.
Excellent. You take care. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm glad I got to be one of the first ones on.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
Take care. God bless.
God bless. Bye-bye.